Hello everyone, welcome to another exciting lecture about the pituitary gland. So today we're gonna dive deep into the heart of your brain to unravel the secrets of this tiny yet mighty master gland. So buckle up because by the end of this video, you will have a newfound appreciation for the pituitary gland's incredible power. So we'll start with the origin of the pituitary gland. So if you look at the origin of the pituitary gland, which we often refer to as the master gland, originates from two distinct and different embryonic structures. So one is called as the anterior pituitary and the other one is called as the posterior pituitary. All right, so the anterior pituitary is also called as adenohypophysis. We call it as adenohypophysis. While the posterior pituitary part is all called as neurohypophysis. Neurohypophysis. So the anterior part arises from the oral ectoderm. It arises from oral ectoderm, which we also call as ruthkeys pouch. Ruthkeys pouch. Whereas the posterior pituitary develops from the neural ectoderm. Neural ectoderm. All right, so this is about the origin of the pituitary gland. Now we'll move to the next section where we are looking at the location of pituitary gland. So if you look at the location of the pituitary gland is situated at the base of the brain. So it is located at the base of the brain, just below the hypothalamus. So it's below hypothalamus. All right. And the location of the pituitary gland, in more precise terms, we can say that it's housed in a bony structure which is called as the sella turcica. Sella turcica. So this sella turcica is a bony kind of depression within the sphenoid bone. So it's a depression within a sphenoid bone. Within a sphenoid bone. And the pituitary gland, it weighs about 0.5 grams on an average, and it has a diameter of about 1.3 centimeters on an average. So this is about the location of the pituitary gland. Now moving to the structure, what the structure of pituitary gland, how does the pituitary gland structurally look? So structurally it appears to be a kind of pear-shaped structure. So structurally this is pear-shaped, and the pituitary gland, as I already mentioned, consists of kind of two different parts. One is the anterior lobe and the other one is the posterior lobe. So it has an anterior lobe and a posterior lobe. So the anterior lobe is located in the anterior pituitary, while the posterior lobe is located in the posterior pituitary. So the anterior pituitary is glandular in nature. So it's glandular in nature. And it's composed of different cell types, and each of these cell types secrete different kinds of hormones. So different types of hormones are secreted from the anterior pituitary, and these hormones can include somatotropes, like the growth hormones, and then it can include some lactotropes, like prolactin. It can include some corticotropes, and gonadotropes, like LSH and others, and then it can include also thyrotropes. So these kind of all tropes are secreted from the anterior lobe of the pituitary gland. So now if you look at the posterior lobe of the pituitary gland, it's basically an extension of hypothalamus, all right? And it consists of nerve fibers. So it consists of nerve fibers and nerve endings. So it basically, the posterior lobe of the pituitary gland, it doesn't synthesize any hormones. So we'll say it doesn't synthesize any hormones. Then what does it do? It basically stores hormones, but those hormones are produced from hypothalamus. So we'll say it stores hormones, but those hormones are synthesized by hypothalamus, which is just above the pituitary gland. And which type of hormones does it does it store? So it stores the hormones from the hypothalamus, and those hormones are oxytocin and vasopressin. So vasopressin is also called as the antidiuretic hormone, or ADH. So now moving to the another part wherein we're looking at the hormones. As I already mentioned, the different types of hormones that the anterior pituitary gland secretes, while as the posterior pituitary, the hormones that it stores basically from which are secreted from the hypothalamus. But now we'll go in detail and we'll see what are the hormones which are produced by the pituitary gland, what are the hormones that are stored by the posterior part of the pituitary gland, and what are their functions. So first we'll move and look about the anterior part of the pituitary gland and the hormones. Anterior hormones. So in order to remember all the anterior hormones, you need to remember a mnemonic term which is GPAT FLM. So these are all the hormones that are secreted from the anterior part of the pituitary gland. So the G stands for the growth hormone. So the first hormone is growth hormone. So this growth hormone, as you know, it stimulates growth and cell reproduction. So it stimulates growth and reproduction within the cells. And then we have the other hormone that starts with a P, and it's called as the prolactin. PRL, or prolactin. So the prolactin initiates and sustains lactation or milk production. So milk production. So this hormone is associated with the milk production. And then we have one more hormone. That's the third hormone, starts with A, and it's called as the adrenocorticotropic hormone, or we can write ACTH, adrenocorticotropic hormone. It stimulates the adrenal glands to produce cortisol. Okay, so it produces cortisol. So this hormone basically stimulates the adrenal glands which are present somewhere else, and then those adrenal glands produce cortisol under the effect of the ACTH. And then we have one more hormone, starts with the T, that's the thyroid stimulating hormone, thyrotrop. So thyroid stimulating hormone. So this thyroid stimulating hormone, it regulates the thyroid glands and its hormones. Thyroid gland and its hormones. And then we have fifth hormone which starts with the F, and the hormone that starts with the F is the follicle stimulating hormone. So this follicle stimulating hormone is present in females, and it stimulates the ovarian follicle development, while as in males it can support the sperm production. So we can say it supports ovarian follicle development, and then in males it controls some sperm production. Then we have one more hormone which starts with the L, that's called as the luteinizing hormone. That's the sixth hormone, that's the luteinizing hormone, that's LH. And in females, it triggers ovulation in females. And it also regulates their menstrual cycle regulation. And if we look in males, so in males, it stimulates the production of testosterone, okay? Testosterone production is controlled by luteinizing hormone in males. And then we have the last hormone from the anterior pituitary that starts with the M, that's the seventh hormone, and we call it as the melanocyte stimulating hormone. So as it already mentions the melanocyte, so melanocyte stimulating hormone, it plays a regulatory role in kind of regulating the pigmentation in vertebrates. So we can write pigmentation in vertebrates because it stimulates the production of melanocytes, and these cells are responsible for the production of what we call as melanin, which gives our skin a color and hair color. And there are different types of the MSH, or melanocyte stimulating hormone, which can include like alpha type, that's alpha MSH, and then we can have beta MSH and gamma MSH, melanocyte stimulating hormone. And each of these have like slightly different functions. Like the most well-known form is the alpha MSH, and alpha MSH is kind of more involved in regulating skin pigmentation. Others have also roles in skin pigmentation, but alpha MSH is kind of most well known and it's more involved in that. So now the anterior pituitary hormones are all done here. We'll move to the posterior pituitary part, where we look at the posterior hormones of pituitary. Posterior hormones. So as already mentioned, posterior pituitary, it doesn't secrete any hormones, but it stores hormones which are secreted from hypothalamus. And hypothalamus is just above the pituitary gland. So the two hormones that the posterior pituitary stores includes oxytocin, The first one and the second one is vasopressin. So oxytocin, what it does is it plays a role in uterine contractions in females, uterine contractions during the childbirth, and it also controls the milk production or milk ejection in females, and this happens during the breastfeeding. All right, so because of these things, we can also call it as the birth hormone. So oxytocin is also called as birth hormone. And then we have one more hormone which the posterior pituitary stores and is secreted from hypothalamus, that's vasopressin. And vasopressin is also called as the antidiuretic hormone. It regulates the water balance, by influencing the kidney function. Okay, so it can affect the kidney function. And then by affecting the kidney function, it can reduce basically the urine production. It reduces urine production. So these are some pituitary hormones from the posterior end which are stored by pituitary gland. So some of the key takeaways from our lecture today, I'll mention some of the key takeaways. So we'll write key takeaways from our lecture today. So some of the key takeaways is that the pituitary is a vital endocrine organ which is located at the base of the brain, and it has two distinct lobes. One is the anterior one and the other one is the posterior lobe of the pituitary gland. And then the second point that is a key takeaway from our today's lecture is that the anterior pituitary produces and releases some variety of hormones, while as the posterior pituitary, what it does is it stores the hormones. Okay, so the anterior pituitary produces and releases a variety of hormones that regulate growth, reproduction, stress response, and thyroid function, whereas the posterior pituitary stores and releases hormones like oxytocin and vasopressin, and these hormones are basically produced by hypothalamus, which are involved in water balance and then childbirth also. So thank you for joining me on this journey through the world of hormones and endocrine wonders. So stay curious and keep exploring and sharing our content on YouTube. Thank you very much.